You're teaching a lesson and a student becomes disruptive. What do you do? This is an interview question that just about any principal is going to ask a teaching candidate. And I know a great answer. You could say, I would pull the student to the side and have a brief conversation about why she's being disruptive, and then I would reteach my expectations. This seems like a great answer, and it helped me find a job. But then when I got into the classroom and started teaching, I found that those side conversations didn't really work. When I pulled the student to the side and asked her what kept her from meeting my expectations, she would shrug her shoulders and avoid eye contact. The conversation I had hoped to have quickly became just a lecture. And as teachers, we know that lectures are just about the least effective way to teach somebody something new. Sorry, Ted. So I asked my students, what do I need to do to get you to change your behavior? Send us to the discipline office, they said. And that's when I understood. The zero tolerance policies that my students had grown up with had taught them that unless they were punished for their behavior, it didn't need to change. A student who is suspended even once is twice as likely to drop out. Parents and community members fought for years to end zero tolerance, including the Community Youth Justice Initiative. And in 2006, after this long, hard fight, Chicago Public Schools became one of the first districts in the country to adopt an alternative approach known as restorative justice. But while the policies around zero tolerance started to change, the culture stuck around. Students are still suspended for up to 10 days for fighting. They're still removed from the classroom for things that have nothing to do with school safety, such as coming to school out of uniform or cutting class. Yes, the punishment for not going to class is having to miss class. And I can bet that at many schools throughout this city, despite the fact that restorative justice was adopted 7 years ago into our student code of conduct, that many people still don't really know what it is. But restorative justice advocates are still working hard to support its implementation in schools. Lots of high schools start by forming what's known as a peer jury. It's not what it sounds like. Students don't judge their peers and they don't issue punishments. Instead, they ask open-ended questions and they listen empathetically to determine the needs of both the victim and the offender so that they can repair the harm and restore their relationship. Despite all of the evidence against it, Chicago Public Schools issued almost 70,000 out-of-school suspensions last year. This figure seems overwhelming, and it is. But there are things that even a classroom teacher can do on an individual level to start shifting the focus from rules to relationships, from punishment to repairing harm. Talking circles are a safe way for a teacher to build community in the classroom and develop communication skills. Each student shares their story as they feel comfortable, and everybody else just listens. It's incredibly simple and incredibly powerful. One of the most powerful talking circles I led was in my junior level geography class a couple of years ago. This class was full of big personalities, some Black, some Mexican, some Puerto Rican. And over the course of the year, tension had been building between students of different backgrounds. This resulted in some students refusing to work together, and some even making racist comments. Instead of sending these students to the discipline office, though, I decided to see if I could try to break down some of these barriers. So I asked the students to circle their desks, and then I asked them to just start speaking generally about racism in the school. A few of the more outspoken students started talking about how they felt when assumptions were made about them based on their race. Other students spoke up to question whether it was really about racial tension or if it had more to do with gang divisions. They talked about the influence that teachers had on racial tension. The conversation got heated, but it remained respectful as students followed the rules of passing the talking piece around the circle and waiting their turn to speak. At the end of the conversation, I asked the students, what do we need to do to try to solve some of these problems? How should we address them? Their response, we need to have more discussions like this one. After that day, the tension in the classroom started to melt away. I saw what an effect our circle had had when two students, one Black, one Mexican, chose to work together on a project, even though they had terrible arguments all year long with each other before that. It was like some feel-good classroom movie come true. Of course, restorative justice has its challenges. Advocates struggle to get buy-in from teachers and administrators. Some students don't respond to restorative justice, just as many students don't respond to punishment. And resources are still spent to staff school security guards and police officers in schools, but somehow we just don't have enough money to pay for a restorative justice coordinator. But what if? What if every school had a care room? What if every teacher was trained on how to lead a peace circle or conduct a restorative conversation? What if every student was trained as a peer juror? Schools that do implement school-wide restorative justice and other similar positive behavior supports, they showed significant decreases in discipline referrals, increased attendance, more positive school climate, icing on the cake, increased test scores.